Welcome to Delayed Offside, where your two least cartoonist hosts still, make their appearance. But what has become a recurring theme here is a little bit in the last while that we haven't been able to actually get a show with all four of the hosts on it. So in light of that, we have decided to kind of come up with an excuse-o-meter or a reason-o-meter to explain why certain people aren't here. So we're going to go here quickly to the excuse generator, and I believe you can see it there. And we're going to see what Adam's reason is for missing today's episode. So let's see what happens here.
Interested to find out.
My car won't start. Yes, even though he's already at home, I could see this one. He did ask for a boost at some point in this year, so that's a fair one. We're gonna try Sanjay today too. See what happens for this one. Ooh. Tried to recreate Jackass and has to go to the hospital. Nice. Honestly, I could see it flipping either way. I can flip it, and let's just throw in a third one again for Adam, just in case, because I feel like he's gonna have more than one excuse that he's gonna fire up. It'll be like, because that's how it is. Oh, so close. Ate cat food by accident and is worried. I could see that one, actually. I could see that. It was very close to being the date one, which would have been
it's a common problem, I've heard.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, with that, we're going to start the pod. Welcome back to Delayed Offside. Thanks for watching. Please like, click, subscribe, share. Reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, apparently, and any other type of platform. Or start your own fan page. That would be useful. We were going to start this segment with viewer questions and letters, but we don't have any. So we had to scrap it completely.
Which is so unusual. We usually get lots of questions.
Now I'm starting to suspect that maybe all of them are Sanjay, because it's always like, where's more of that Sanjay? Can you ask Sanjay more questions? That, or he's got a stalker. It's one of the two. I don't know. I just don't see why you'd stalk Sanjay. It's a lot of work and he's never here. I mean, it's just not worth it probably at this point. Come on.
At least he's consistent with the question asking.
That is true.
Instead of the showing up.
So we'll start with the big news and maybe the reason why you're wearing what you're wearing.
Yes.
And I don't know who wrote this, but we're going to. Do you want me to read this as it's written on here?
Might as well.
Okay, why not? Auston Matthews had a hell of a week. First, he set the Leafs franchise record for most goals in a single season, as well as the most goals by an American-born player in a single season. Then he completed his 50 goals in 50 game run, scoring number 50 and 51 versus the Habs. It's an unofficial 50 and 50 though, as an official 50 and 50 is the team's first 50 games of the season. Man, it's actually a little tougher to read here than it is in your brain. What are your thoughts on the rule? Okay, so this is funny.
That was pure poetry, man. That was beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Brought a tear to my eye.
Reads weren't
my
always
God.
My bad spot, but it's funny. But you mentioned this, but this was the conversation that came up today when I was listening to the radio as well, which was, do we still think of it as 50 and 50 if it's not the first 50 games of the year? Because it's not because people are like trying to shit on the accomplishment, but just that's been the hallmark for how they've always graded it. And I think this was on the Dave Jameson show, but they made the comment, they're like, if you look at Gretzky, when he got 50 goals in 39 games, he was scoreless in the first 2 games of the year. So like realistically, that's 50 and 37 games, but they counted it by the marker of 50 games played.
Yeah.
And so that kind of changed it up. And that's what Matthews is doing, is like, if you count from where he scored his first goal and just it's games played, isn't it? Because he missed some games in between here, correct?
Yeah. He missed a few games for suspension there.
Right. So if you count just those games, then it's 50 in 50, which is, how do you feel about that, Ryan?
Right.
Those guys are still going at it on my Twitter. I just got another update.
Oh, are they? Yeah. We'll have to update people on that. So no, like, it's not an official 50 and 50, because the official 50 and 50 is the team's first 50 games of the season.
But I think you can't undermine the accomplishment that 50 goals in 50 games is
Definitely not.
Hell of a production. Like,
absolutely.
Wow.
Like, it's still a huge, incredible achievement. It's still something we haven't seen since 95-96 with Lemieux, which was also an unofficial 50 and 50 in 95-96.
And capped off on a penalty shot.
Didn't know that.
It was the first penalty shot, 50 goal score. Yeah, like the 50th goal that was scored in a penalty shot.
Oh, did not know that. There you go. And like, I wonder, like, were people just, disregarding Lemieux back then? Like, I don't know. I don't remember way back then. And obviously there wasn't social media, so maybe it wasn't quite as loud. But yeah, there's definitely a large contingent, especially on Leafs Twitter. It's a lot of Habs fans basically saying it doesn't count and just kind of disregarding Matthews entirely. Obviously, like I said, it's not an official 50 and 50. That's just the way it is. But I'm still going to celebrate the shit out of it because it's something we haven't seen in a long, long time. And it's a great accomplishment.
This is not meant as a knock, but my God, the fact that they have had so few 50 goal scores is crazy.
The Leafs,
right?
The Leafs, honestly, the Leafs really, unless you go back to original six era, they really haven't had a lot of the elite players in the league. I mean, even in those teams in the 60s, I mean, Frank Mahovlich was a great goal scorer, but they didn't have a lot of the top players. They were more of like a grind them out team. And even, those teams in the 90s, like Doug Gilmour was great and everything, but he was like probably the closest the Leafs have had since the 60s to having the best player in the league. But I mean, there was another guy named Wayne Gretzky who was better. So
it's funny because like when we talk about that era, like when I was a kid and you were a kid and those like Clark and Gilmour, what I remember them as being like elite of the elite because of how big and how popular they were, but they really weren't. I'm not saying they weren't good hockey players. They were amazing hockey players.
Yeah.
But they weren't Lemieux, Gretzky level. No. And like that's
like Gilmour had that 1 or 2 seasons where he was like right up there, but it was
the milk commercial. Do you remember?
I remember the udders. Yeah, I remember the milk commercial.
Absolutely,
I remember the milk commercial.
The legs, yeah.
But no, like the Leafs haven't like. I mean, Matthews was the first Rocket Richard winner. He was, the first. He hasn't. He was the first Calder winner, I believe. And then like if he does end up winning,
did have Andrew Raycroft, but he'd already won it with Boston.
So. Yeah, that doesn't count. Yeah, he wasn't with us. And then if he does end up going on and winning the Hart this season, I mean that's going to be the first time since I think Ted Kennedy, I think was the last guy who won it for the Leafs. Wow. So it's been a long time.
It's funny, like, and that's the thing that really stands out to me from this was. Like, to me, Toronto, I understand now maybe why Toronto might not be a draw for a hockey player versus like living in Florida or Anaheim where you can be hidden and not a media presence versus, somebody who actually really wants that, like John Tavares, where he's okay with that.
Yeah.
But to me, for the 90s and at least early 2000s, Toronto should have been a draw and it wasn't. And I'm really shocked by that, like that it wasn't able to pull off those big names or that it didn't draft those players. And like,
they were terrible at drafting. That was the Leafs' biggest Achilles heel for years was their terrible drafting and just trading away draft picks for aging players. Mm-hmm. They were able to draw in people. Actually, Wayne Gretzky wanted to come play for Toronto, but that whole deal got nixed by Leafs management. But like Eric Lindros wanted to play here, they brought him in. I mean, you look at that team just before the lockout and the names they had on that team: Brian Leetch, Joe Nieuwendyk. I think Ron Francis was on that team. It was a lot of old players, but big names that, seem to want to play for Toronto. So I don't know if, it's definitely, it needs to be a certain type of person that wants to play in Toronto, because obviously you're going to get lots of media scrutiny and lots of attention. Whereas somewhere else you can just be an unknown and play hockey and make lots of money. So, it's not for everyone. Like Brian Burke's book, when I read Brian Burke's book, he said I think it was Boschman he was talking about when he brought him in. He wasn't the type of guy who could thrive in that kind of environment. And that's why he played so well somewhere else and faltered in Toronto.
Yeah. I could see it. We're going to go back to the 50 and 50 though. What are your thoughts on that rule?
I think it's dumb. I don't see why, scoring 50 goals from the start of the season is any less impressive or any more impressive than scoring 50 goals in 50 games in the middle of the season. I've seen the argument it might be even harder than that, because later on the season, teams are getting geared up for playoffs. They have their defensive structures all set and they're playing tighter hockey. So it might even be more difficult to score later in the season. But again, that's just something that was established way back when to appease Habs fans, and it's stuck. And that's just the way it is. You know what? I'm going to do one more dig at Montreal Canadiens fans.
It's like listening to Adam talk about the Flames. Go ahead.
Well, you know what? Might as well. So the interesting thing is with the Rocket Richard's 50 and 50 is he got 50 and 50 during World War II when a lot of NHL players were overseas fighting, and he was playing against non-NHL players. And that was the only time he was able to actually do the 50 and 50. So really, Habs fans, who's 50 and 50 is really more legit. I would argue Matthews.
It's funny to me that it's not like a Toronto thing or a Habs thing. It's an everybody. Nobody can let anybody have anything anymore.
No.
Like I have to listen to Sanjay go, Gaudreau's the best 5-on-5 points guy. We're all just like, screw that. I can't do this. Oh, he wasn't last year. We didn't try until a contract. Like, you know what I mean? Like nobody gives anybody anything anymore. Like, McDavid does this, plays with Draisaitl, blah, 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 blah. And then like, it's just, there's always something. It's so funny to me. But yeah. Like I've heard that argument about Richard before too, but let's be honest, the guy was a stud.
Oh, I know. He's a legend. I'm just digging at Habs fans. That's all I'm doing.
You just can't end up in the box for looking so good unless you're an amazing hockey player. And that's just the truth about Richard. But I do think it's interesting. Like, I understand the concept of like, this has been how historically we've looked at it. But I don't think it takes anything away from Matthews, really. And people can argue what they want. It's still 50 goals in 50 games, 50 plus goals. And it's like McDavid last year when he got his 100 points in 50 some games. That was the best pace they'd seen in like something like 20 years. Mm-hmm. And this is the same thing. We're looking at like 20, 30 years. This is the best pace we've seen. And it's nice that the NHL is starting to have this offensive outburst, the outburst that disappeared when we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
And the question, I guess, and this isn't to take away from the previous conversation, but the question is, do you think this is going to keep sustaining, or do you think that we're going to see a drawback where it goes the other way? And if you think it's going to keep going, why do you think so?
Honestly, I don't know why it's going the way it's going. I'm almost wondering, well, a few things. I think the players are getting more skilled than ever before. People are talking about like the way that Matthews shoots the puck now and the way he can change angles and totally confuse the goalie. Like, these are things that kids are being taught growing up. I was listening to the Jeff Merrick show and they were talking about how like,
who's been on this podcast. True story.
And you got to get back on. What the hell?
That's Adam's job.
What's his excuse for not getting him on this? Spin the wheel and we'll find out.
Yeah, exactly. Jeff swallowed a ladybug.
Yeah, exactly. He was saying that like there's like kids in like Pee Wee hockey, like everyone's doing the Michigan goal. So I think that could be one thing. Is just players are getting more and more skilled. Maybe another thing is the kind of defensemen that are really being pushed now too. Like you see guys like Roman Josi and Cale Makar and Adam Fox. Like back in the day, you wanted these big burly, more so defensemen, right? But now you have defensemen that are really pushing the pace and pushing the offense. And so, maybe, a Morgan Rielly and Roman Josi and Cale Makar and those type of defensemen are becoming more the norm nowadays. So maybe that has something to do with it too. But like, I don't know. I'm hoping it's going to continue this trend because it's really exciting. It's really fun hockey. We're seeing stuff happening this season. And we've talked about this quite a few episodes now, but performances this season that are super rare and we haven't seen in years and years. And it's awesome. It's really fun.
It's a couple of years ago. I remember there was a conversation about how when the rules changed after the lockout and like they completely restructured how hockey went. It was a while back now, but those players were finally in the league, right? So you think about it, like when did the rules change? When was that lockout?
05,
right? So the whole game changed and players that weren't actually that good anymore, that couldn't keep up with speed, slowly started disappearing out of the game. But kids were being raised in there. I can't remember whose argument this is. It's not mine. But kids were being raised in that world. So they were finally entering the NHL, having lived that entire league, and then were able to know how to navigate in it better than others who hadn't.
Yeah, that's
just like the same way as if you like made the nets bigger. It would take 20 years and then your goaltenders would get really good again, you know, or 15 years or 16 or whatever, just enough for the development to catch up. And I wonder if that's true here, where the development has grown again. And now we got these guys coming out, because as much as we're talking about Matthews and McDavid, like we know Bedard's coming. There's going to be more and more good players coming. And that's the thing that I'm excited for, is that there's more buzz coming down the line than I can recall. Because after Crosby and Ovechkin, they wanted that buzz, like Malkin and stuff. And Malkin's great, but until what he did, I guess. But it wasn't the same, right? He's not Crosby. And he had great years, and he won Conn Smythe, but still, like,
he had injury issues too. Like when he was healthy,
the top
he was
100
good,
players. Even the league didn't think he was as good as maybe he could be, right? So I don't know. I just think there's way more buzz coming down the pipeline now, it feels like, and I think that that's at least possibly sustainable. Also, to talk about people having great weeks, Kirill Kaprizov tied the Wild record for most goals in a season, 42 by Eric Stahl and Martin Gaborik. Gaborik's really forgotten.
Did you just say Martin Gaborik?
Yeah, didn't I?
I think you did. Marion Gaborik.
Marion Gaborik. Sorry. Yeah. Well, you can edit that out, but
no, I won't.
Martin Gaborik. Sorry, Marion Gaborik. He's really forgotten about. We don't talk about him as much, but he was legitimately the best player out of that top three, because it was him, DiPietro, and Heatley, and it went in that opposite order. But he was kind of the guy that really was the bomb for the longest time.
Heatley was damn good.
He was, but Heatley dropped off way quicker than Gaborik did.
Right.
So that's what I mean.
Yeah, I think Heatley probably had like the hottest portion of the career. We was on that line with Ottawa, like that line.
Burn the brightest.
Right, burn the brightest. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want to say. Thank you for knowing what I wanted to say, Baron.
Yeah, it's Shakespeare. and he burned out quicker too. He really did.
Yeah.
When the game got too fast, he was never fast, but he was good.
Yeah.
In his time.
Well, that line with him, Alfredson, Spezza were dynamite for Ottawa.
Do you think Spezza comes back to the Leafs next year?
I don't know. Like you can see his play starting to drop off. Yeah. So I'm not sure. I think we'll see. I think it'll depend on the playoffs and
fair enough.
And see how they do. But
we're talking about Kirill Kaprizov, and let's talk about this. So he's probably going to have the record by the end of the year. Minnesota is really untalked about in the sense that they kind of went for it by getting Marc-Andre Fleury. They have a really good goaltending tandem between him and Talbot. This is kind of their big year before the cap penalty kicks in. I still don't understand why they bought out Suter this year. I think you could have waited and had a cheaper buyout penalty.
All right.
But they decided to move on, and that's that. Do you think with players like him and how they're no longer the boring team, they're kind of like a fun and engaging team to watch, do you think that this team's going to make a splash in the Western Conference in the playoffs?
I think they're a contender in the West. I really do. Like, I would put obviously Colorado and Calgary at like the very top tier of that West. And then after that, really it's a smorgasbord of various teams. I think Minnesota would be probably at the top of that second tier. Especially after getting Marc-Andre Fleury, and Kaprizov is just outstanding, just a fantastic young talent. We're talking about young talent all the time. It's crazy. Like, this is his sophomore year, right? This is his second year in the NHL.
Yeah, he's like 40, so it's fine.
Yeah, fair enough. But it's 2 years in. He's already 23rd on the Minnesota Wild's all-time point list and 18th in goals. In two years in, and then so like at this pace, he's gone to the franchise records for goals in like 3 seasons and points in like 6.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So they have the scoring, they have the goaltender, they have great defensemen. I think they're a pretty solid team. I really do.
Oof, that argument has gotten worse between those two guys. Oh my God, I'll tell you about it later. Yeah, it's not good. It's funny though, because I like this team and I want them to do well, but they're in the West, so I really can't.
Right.
But I do feel like they aren't given enough respect. And this team is probably automatic into the second round, I would think.
Well, they're what? Go play St. Louis.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
That's a pretty tough first matchup because St.
That's
Louis
what I mean.
is no one to scoff at either. Like I would say they're like right beside each other almost. It's kind of like that whole seeding thing, right? The way that the seeding's going right now. I'm sure either of them would rather play, Los Angeles instead of each other, but that's just the way the seedings work right now.
That's the Oilers team to play.
I know.
Mind you, I've been happy with
that one.
I've been happy with their matchups the last 2 years. How's that worked out for me?
Yeah, that's fair.
Better than Chicago.
Nothing's a guarantee.
Better than Winnipeg.
Nothing's a guarantee in the NHL playoffs.
100%. So it really doesn't matter. You could play the best team and you could lose. You could play the best team and you could win.
Yeah. It's the way the puck bounces and how hot your goaltender is.
And if you're injured or not.
Yes. Yep. Injuries.
So, there's lots there. We'll talk a little bit about some of the other stuff that's happened here. So speaking of the LA Kings, it's come out that Drew Doughty had to have wrist surgery and that he is done for the season.
That's
now,
crazy.
This is kind of crazy because they had talked about him, like how much the team was kind of missing him and he hadn't been back yet. And that it was sounding like it wasn't good news. But I think you still think someone's going to work through it or something will pop up and happen. And then all of a sudden it's come out and it's like, no, he is done. How big of a loss is this for the LA Kings? And the way things are going right now, do you see them slipping out of that third position and another team coming up?
Well, if another team is going to come up, it'll be Vegas, right? And so this is huge. Obviously, he's their number one defenseman,
right?
So losing your stud number one D man, especially for the playoffs, I mean that really hurts. I wasn't really that big into LA anyways. Like I give them props for where they are in the standings right now. But I really didn't see them as much of a threat. You take away Drew Doughty, I really don't see them as much of a threat.
Did you expect them to make the playoffs this year?
I thought they'd be a bubble team.
That's what I thought too.
Like the West really is overall a much weaker conference, and so I thought they had a shot because I thought there was a few of those teams that weren't quite great, but like they were starting to kind of get there. That I thought maybe could push for a spot. And I knew LA had some like really good young players coming up that, maybe might make a difference. And it obviously has. And then getting, the guy from Montreal, that center from Montreal that they got in the offseason.
Was that Dandenov?
Huh?
Was that Dandenov?
No, not Dandenov.
No, not Dandenov. That's the one that's for Vegas. It's
apologies. He's a great defensive center that like shut down Matthews in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Apologies, Habs fans. I should be apologizing.
Why
to
are
Habs
fans? He ain't
well, because he came from Montreal, I guess. Just total shade being thrown at Montreal fans on this episode. Anyways, he's a fantastic two-way player, and I think like with him and Kopitar down the middle.
Philip Deneau.
Thank you. Yes, Deneau. I knew it started with a D too. I just couldn't think of what the heck his name was.
That's why I said Dandenov.
I know. I knew what your mind was going. I just couldn't get there.
Not the right spot. I'll tell you that.
No. But two solid two-way centermen. Down your middle, like that's pretty solid too.
And someone who can pick up more minutes than he had to play in Montreal, and someone who can help take that load off of Kopitar.
Yeah.
Kopitar has led that team in scoring something like 16 out of 17 seasons or 15 out of 16 seasons.
He's solid, man.
And when you go look at his numbers though, it's like 50, 60 points. Like he's standard.
Yeah.
He's good. He's standard, but it's like they have really lacked goal scoring these last couple of years.
They've always been more of like a defensive heavy team. Right. Like you think those cup runs, like they just ran people over. I don't think of like this high scoring, exciting to watch hockey team. Like they just killed teams. Yeah. And that's really what they did. So, anyways, Vegas is starting to pick it up now. And, maybe this will make the difference and they'll be able to push up into that number 3 spot.
Well, we hope not. But here's the tweet that came out from Traxy, which is at Trax123. Their remaining schedule is a cakewalk compared to Vegas. LA has 1 game of 8 against playoff bound opponents. Vegas has 5 of 9.
Ooh.
So I think that's kind of interesting because I could see that really
And
hurting Vegas.
how many points are they up on Vegas? Let me look that up real quick.
I don't know how much
Unless
they
you know
are.
it.
I think Edmonton's 6 points now up, which is
I
nice
think
for them.
I think Edmonton has that number 2 spot locked up.
They still need something like their magic numbers like 13. They were saying today, like a combination of wins and losses.
So let's see, Vegas is at 84 points. So they're 2 back of LA with 1 game in hand. So
that could be there.
So
they could be the third.
They win 1 more game and they'll be tied with LA. So
I think they're a harder team to play, but they're not really. It's not like Vegas is blowing the doors off of anyone either. They have not looked great. Even
they haven't been healthy all season. That's going to be the crazy thing when if they get into the playoffs.
Activate Mark Stone and
what is this team going to look like? Yeah, because we haven't seen their full roster. Like Max Pacioretty just came back. As Mark Stone's still out, he'll be out to the playoffs. When they first got Eichel, he was out, right? So they're going to actually ice like an entire lineup. Like they could be scary good. And
that's why I hope that they make 4th or they don't make it
right, because you don't want to play them. I wouldn't want to play them, especially in the first round when you have no idea what they're going to look like.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because they have a deck of cards and they have an extra deck of cards, and those cards could be crappy and not get played, or they could be used and you could be in trouble.
Yeah, and Leonard's been injured a lot. Leonard was injured a lot too this season. I think he just came back.
Sounds like he's going to need off-season surgery or some of the talk, but
I
don't know. Like I think they're going to get to. I could see them making the playoffs. I personally hope they don't, for lots of reasons. But man, if they do, you never know. I just don't trust them.
They're going to be however many million over the cap, right? Like they're going to have a stacked roster if everyone's healthy. That's the big thing. If everyone's healthy, the other thing too is like, a lot of these guys haven't played together. So like, how quickly can they get chemistry going with their lines and everything like that? So it'll be really interesting.
There's a lot of talk that if you pay attention to Kelly McCrimmon and how he runs things, that DeBoer will be gone. If they don't make the playoffs, DeBoer will be gone. And even if they make the playoffs, there's a good chance he could be gone anyways.
Really?
Yeah. Pete DeBoer is an interesting coach. He's a guy who just that first year or two, he just blows the doors off the place and then he falls back. And
sometimes some coaches just, you can only take so much of them, right? Like Torts is another guy like that where I don't know if they have the same coaching style, but I've heard that about Torts too, where like, gets great results at the start, but then quickly loses the room after a few years because people just don't want to hear it anymore. So
Malkin's been suspended for 4 games for his cross check to Mark Borowiecki. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. But I remember he used to call him Borokop in Ottawa after he tackled that purse snatcher. But what do you like? Are you surprised at the 4 game? I honestly, part of me thought he was going to get fined, and on the high end, I seen him getting suspended, but I wasn't sure how long. Like, were you surprised by this 4 games, or is this kind of what you? I was maybe
surprised by 4. I'm glad he got suspended because to me it looked worse than the Matthews cross check. So if Matthews got 2, I was hoping he would at least get 2, just to have some consistency in the calling. Like,
fair.
But like there is no consistency, so you just never know. It's like throwing a dart at a board and wondering where it's going to end up, because I've seen some other nasty stuff happening this season where someone gets a fine or nothing at all, and then other things that maybe you don't think is as deserving and it gets a lot of games. So he has been suspended once before for 1 game for a high stick, I read. So he does have a bit of a history. So I guess around 4 games isn't like it was vicious. Did you see it?
Yeah, I did actually.
Like
I posted the clip or whatever even today, but yeah, he
was spitting blood on the way back to the bench. Borokop, like, holy God, like he nailed him good. So, it was definitely worth the suspension. And I guess with the history, you knock it up a little, plus with the blood and everything that was seen on the ice. I guess it's fair.
It's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like someone made this point to me once, which is like there's certain acts in a hockey game that automatically tell me you're trying to hurt somebody. It's not like my stick can pop up and hit you in the face. Yeah. And that's not necessarily on purpose.
Yeah.
Like I'm in charge of my stick. I'm supposed to do whatever, but I might hit you in the face. Could still be an accident, but I wasn't trying to injure you.
Exactly. Yeah.
But when I go at you with my arms high and hit you, like I have no choice but to hit you someplace where you're vulnerable. And that's part of the issue, I think, on there. The problem is like, like talking to different people. Some people thought like it was going to be a fine. Some people thought it was going to be a couple of games
because no one knows.
It was going to be 5 to 6 games. Exactly.
No
What's
one
the
knows.
standard? What's the line?
And no one player knows. Department safety is ridiculous. Like there is no consistency.
But it always has been. Like Colin Campbell used to make people drive out to meet him, and he told Shanahan to knock it off. Like he made Shanahan drive out to meet him in a farmyard and told him to smarten up.
Yeah.
Like those are things that used to happen. You know?
Yeah. Like why can't there just be a standard created of some sort? Like I just don't quite understand. I mean, there has to be a little bit of like, you know, you're making a call as, you know, was it intentional or not? And how dangerous was it versus something else? And also history, but like, you should be able to still, you know, okay, if it's your first offense and we deem this was intention to hurt and, you know, it involved the head, you get this many games, you know, like, I mean, it should be something where people can look it up and be like, okay, I would say it's yes. Okay. He's going to get like 5 games, you know,
but, like, I'll say this, there's 2 things I'll say, which one is like, life doesn't work that way. People can kill somebody and they can get different years for the same crime, murder, right? You can end up in jail for longer than somebody else. But 2, the point that I think is probably why it isn't, is that if I set the limit, then somebody's going to make the choice knowing that limit. So if I'm like mad and I'm like, if I cross-check him in the face, it's been 2 years since my last cross-check, I'll get 2 games, right? Whereas I might lose 5 or 6 games. Makes me kind of hopefully act as a deterrent, don't you think?
If they gave out like harsh penalties more often, maybe, but like most of the time it is a little slap on the wrist. I don't know if guys are actually really that nervous.
Well, price-wise, they're not, but definitely in the playoffs.
No, definitely not price, right? No, exactly. Yeah, in the playoffs for sure.
Playoffs, you don't want to miss any games. They're way harder, right? But it's us. No, sorry, not harder.
No, actually the suspensions are basically half. Smaller, so like we usually give you 2 games, you get 1, but you know, losing 2 games in the regular season isn't as detrimental to your team as losing, you know, 1 game in a playoff situation.
2 out of 80 versus 1 out of 4. Yeah, exactly. Although I do think they should do stuff too, where it could be like, you're going to be suspended 2 playoff games and you're suspended 2 games at the start of the season.
Right.
You know? Like not exhibition games, actual games.
Right.
But they don't do it. So just whatever. But I do think there are some arguments to be made there. We are going to do a softer kind of quick episode today. So we're going to talk about 2 retirements here to wrap us up. The first one kind of a little bit of a surprise and not a surprise, which is Ryan Getzlaf, local Regina boy, announcing his retirement. He has spent his entire career with the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, had a chance to go to Vegas and said, no, he didn't want to, had a chance to sign with lots of different teams and said, no, I want to stay here. And the Ducks had a good start to the season. He's been injured. Things have just dropped off. And they're kind of settled down where people kind of thought they would be. But what do you make of Ryan Getzlaf's career? Do you think he's a Hall of Famer?
I think he will be. I don't think he's a first ballot, in my personal opinion. I look at a lot of his accomplishments, and a lot of them are team oriented, which are great. Won a Stanley Cup, won some Olympic gold medals, World Juniors. But you know, you look more at like the individual awards. There's really not a lot there. He was 2-time second team All-Star, and made some All-Star games as well. But other than that, no like President or Art Ross Trophy or Rocket Richard or Hart or anything like that. And then in terms of even points, he has, I had it down here somewhere, 1,013 points. I think he is right now, which is 89th all time, which is very impressive. But there's a lot of guys on that total points list ahead of him that aren't in the Hall of Fame yet. So I think he will get in there. I could almost say 100% he will get in there. Yeah. I just don't know if he's a first ballot. I think there's some guys who have been passed over that are more deserving of it than Getzlaf at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised he has to wait for a little bit.
I think that's fair. I'm with you. I think he's in. I think the hardware, the win, like not his personal hardware, but the team hardware, the goals, the Stanley Cup, and the fact that he's been one of the big names for several years is the reason he's going to get in. I don't think he's going to be in the first ballot like you. Like, I think we basically agree on this.
Yeah.
The only person that would probably say no is Sanjay because he hates the Ducks. And I hate the Ducks too, personally.
Do you?
But I do because of the playoffs in 2017. And honestly, it's like The reason that I used to hate Vancouver all left and became Anaheim Ducks. And so I dislike the Ducks. And now I don't hate them as much. I feel sorry for Ducks fans. I feel sorry for John Gibson. Ask a trade, John. Come to Edmonton. But everyone else, like.
Would you love the Ducks more if they brought back the Mighty and the teal and purple?
I like the teal and white more than the purple jersey myself. But they've really gone. They went black and orange, and
I don't mind the orange.
I
like they brought the old logo back. I hate that winged duck logo. I hated that.
Like the D?
Yeah, the
that
D.
one you didn't.
Yeah, I hated that thing. So I love the Ducks, but probably just because I love the Mighty Ducks movies, right? And then that 03 run with Korea, Rob Niedermeyer and Jaguar. I love that team. I was cheering for them to win that cup.
That team I like, but the last couple of years have not been.
Yeah. When they changed their colors, got rid of the Mighty, and then became like the big nasty Ducks and stuff, they were a little harder to cheer for sure. Yeah,
exactly. The other retirement that's occurring here is related to their nemesis, the Sharks, which is Doug Wilson stepping down as GM after 19 seasons. What do you think his legacy is going to be, and why?
His legacy is like almost unrivaled. Like 19 years as a GM alone is incredible. Like, how many general managers are able to keep their job for that long? He made
Nashville's is getting there.
Is he?
Poyle? Oh yeah, he's been there
I suppose.
Forever.
But like most general managers are what, like 5 years if they're lucky, right? Like it's like what's the longest the Oilers have had a GM for in a row? How many years do they have?
Glenn Sather would be the longest. But after him, not very good.
Not very much, right? So that's impressive. And then he really built that San Jose Sharks team into a legit contender for years and years. Like 14 of 19 years, they made the playoffs. That 2009 Sharks team was probably one of the best teams not to win the Stanley Cup. They won the President's Trophy. They were a phenomenal team. Didn't do it in the playoffs. They also made it to the Cup Finals in 2016. Like, every year you just kind of expected the Sharks to finally break through, right? But unfortunately, they never could get there. They just always fell short, but they were just so, I mean, he didn't win the ultimate prize, unfortunately, but he still made them a serious contender for years and years.
Yeah, I think competitive, but there's a little bit of disappointment there because they were always rated so high, and they were always going to be so good, and they were always the one of the top cup contenders, and they never really did it ever.
No,
they got a couple times close, and that was about it. And they had some pretty good teams, like you said.
Oh yeah, I think that Joe Thornton trade, like that was so phenomenal for the franchise.
That was a huge win, but it's going to be tough for them too, because you have the same person directing things for 19 years and you're switching down and that person's gone. There's a gap that's there that's going to have to be filled in a lot of different ways. And sometimes that void's hugely problematic. Like, this is a franchise that is a small rink, so it's not a huge money maker. They haven't been competitive the last couple of years. And I got to kind of wonder if switching GMs is going to be problematic as this team tries to find itself and its new identity moving forward.
Well, and the new GM coming in, I do not envy this person. Let me just pull up Cap Friendly, because I know their players are like,
signed all these guys to win a cup, and now they're past their prime.
Oh, like that trade, like when they brought in Erik Karlsson, I thought that's it. This team is going to win it, because like they're going to have Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns on the same team. Like, holy shit. And then just somehow everyone dropped off at the same time. But like, Erik Karlsson, they still have, holy God, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more years after this year at 11.5 mil. Brent Burns, how old is he now? He is 31. Brent Burns, they still have for another 3 years at 8 mil. Mark-Edward Vlasic, another 4 years at 7 mil.
Vlasic's a tough one. Vlasic worse than the other two.
Hurdle's good. Don't have to worry about him. Logan,
but he's resigned this year.
Logan Couture, he's 33. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more years at 8 mil. Like, they have a lot of old. This is an old team.
He will not. Some of those guys aren't making it to the end of those contracts. You can guarantee it.
Oh, like they're going to trade, like they're going to try to trade or buy
they're
out,
going to retire.
Well, but if they retire, you're still, I think, on
only if you sign them once they're old, and only depending on the title of the contract. So it could be
really?
the fact that even then you could just be like, you're too old, you're too injured, LTIR. As long as you get a doctor's note, LTIR exists, right? You might want to trade him away, but I mean, like, hey, Hossa was a Coyote. Pronger was a Coyote. Datsuk was a Coyote.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, you find a team who's willing to take that on. But I mean, it's still a GM's going to have to be very creative, because that's a lot of contracts. That's not just like one or two. Like those are big, long-term big contracts. And I mean, you also can't tell a player, okay, you're going to go in LTIR, right? Like,
no, you can't.
You can't force them to retire. They have to want to retire. So,
or be like Joffrey Lupul, where you can still ski and snowboard, but for some reason you can't play hockey. Trip to the Robida Island.
Yes.
Well, that's I think that's it for our show today. I think we still did roughly about a 40-minute show, so that's not too bad there, Ryan, for a short, quick one. We didn't have anybody interrupting with bad impersonations or trying to talk about the Schneiderverse. So I mean,
take it back to the Oiler talk.
Yeah, like
we really had no Oiler talk for a little bit of Oiler talk, not
too much though. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Refreshing is the term for it. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, like, click, subscribe. Like I said, reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Appreciate all the comments on YouTube as well. Hopefully next week we have more than 2, but I doubt it. So you'll have to come up with our own list of excuses again and see what happens for the person that's not there. But with that, I'm Baron.
I'm Ryan.
This has been Delayed Offside. Thank you for listening.